I wanted to drop in switch from this box, so I started out doing a bunch of power ollies off this ledge before just hopping into the bank. Then after bailing my first real try, I had all the confidence that I needed to be able to do it from there. Doing shit that scares me, part 69. So I started out doing some 50-50 grinds before doing some little 5-0 grinds to help me build up some confidence so I could work my way up to grinding halfway across the ledge and 3/4, which honestly wasn't really a big deal for me until I started trying to grind the entire ledge, because then this constant fear of missing the ledge kicked in because I was trying to grind it from the start. However, after some time passed, the fear did die down a bit and I could start focusing on keeping my shoulders straight so I wouldn't do a 180 out. Then I also realized that I needed to go a little bit more parallel with the ledge because that would help me get that little bit of extra speed that I needed to be able to ride away clean. How many tries does it take to do a rock and roll when you haven't done one in over 6 months? Let's find out. So I started out doing a few rock to fakies to help me visualize doing a rock and roll. Then it only took me 3 tries to build up the confidence that I needed to bring the front trucks back around and land it. So I started out doing a few nose stalls before actually going for the crook, which I honestly thought I was going to get first try, but I had some trouble getting my front wheel over the coping, but once I did that, it worked out. I wanted to relearn how to fakie disaster, so I started out doing a bunch of switch rock to fakies and tail stalls to warm up before actually really going for it, which I technically did first try, but it felt shitty, so I kept on trying it until I got one that I was happy with 6 tries later. And I wanted to relearn how to fakie axle stall in this quarter, so I started doing some fakie crooks to make sure I could still get my back truck on the coping and to build up some confidence. Then I just started going for it, and it only took me a couple of tries to figure out how to get one, but quite a few more to figure out how much speed I needed and where my weight needed to be able to do it consistently. But now I wanted to relearn fakie feebles, so right after I got fakie axles back, I started trying them and it worked out first try. But it was kind of just a lucky try because it took me a minute to figure out where my weight needed to be exactly, not just to get into the feeble, but also stay in it and feel confident enough in it to come back in. Doing shit that scares me, part 70. Front shove was the goal, so after a few tricks into the bank and some front shoves on flat, I started out by just bailing it a few times to try to shake the nerves. Then when I really started going for it, I kept on putting too much weight on my back foot, so I kept on sliding out, and for a while I couldn't figure out how to fix it. Eventually though, I figured out if I moved my front foot more towards the nose when I rolled up, it would be a lot easier to get that weight on my front foot and roll away. Now I wanted to combine a fakie disaster and a switch transfer together, so after doing a bunch of both of them, I started going for it. And the scariest part was definitely when the board would slide on the coping a little bit after landing, which happened a lot, but eventually I got kind of used to it and it became a lot less scary. I wanted to nose stall this box, so after doing a few nose stalls and switch drop-ins, I started trying just to get into the nose stall, because I knew if I could get comfortable getting into the nose stall that would be enough just to be able to pop back in. Which the hardest part of that was definitely figuring out the right amount of speed, but once we did, the rest was history. I wanted to crook stall this quarter pipe, so I started doing some on the spine because I've been having some trouble getting my front truck locked in, which did continue over here because I kept on sliding into more of a back nose grind, so to fix that, I honestly did nothing, except try it until it worked out. I wanted to ollie rock fakie this quarter pipe, so after a few rock to fakies and ollies on flat, I started going for them, which I wish I would have done some ollie to fakies first before trying this, because then I would have already been used to popping on a quarter pipe already, and that would have made this trick a lot easier and less scary, but now you know. I wanted to bonk feeble this quarter pipe, so after doing a bunch of nollie pop rocks and regular feebles, I started trying to combine the 2 tricks. Which when I was doing that, the main thing that I was focusing on was turning my shoulders so I can actually land in the feeble, and then the only other thing that I needed from that was just to get my feet to land in the right spot so I could be comfortable enough to come back in. How many tries will it take to land a board slide when I haven't done one in 6 months? Let's find out. So I honestly thought this trick was going to be a lot scarier because I haven't done any type of slide tricks in a long time, but I guess I did enough of them before I got injured that I'm just still kind of used to it. Oh, I got it, 3 tries. So the first thing I had to do was make sure I could still get up the Euro gap, which it wasn't as big of a deal as I remember it being, which was nice. Then from there, I just kept on trying it, slowly building up the confidence that I needed until I got this one, which was unacceptable, so I kept on trying it and got this one 4 tries later. This is the process of relearning front crooks. So I started doing some nose stalls and backside crook stalls to mentally prepare myself for the front crook. Then when I really started going for them, the biggest obstacle that I ran into was not being able to get my front truck on the coping because I kept on riding up the ramp with too much weight on my front foot, and that would make the nose go down faster than I could get my front truck up on the coping. Now to fix that, I started focusing on leaning back a little bit and was able to start getting the front truck up there consistently after that, but I wanted to fakie disaster this quarter pipe, so I started out by trying to deck out my switch rock to fakies as much as possible so I could build up a little bit of confidence with going back into the ramp. So when I started trying them, all I had to do was figure out what the right amount of speed was to be able to get into one comfortably, and
I used to be really good at backside 5.0 stalls on a mini ramp, but then I blew out my knee. So now that I can skate again, I started trying them on this quarter pipe, and I found out they're scary as shit. When I found this little quarter pipe a couple weeks later, I had to give it a shot, and this time there was no fear, so I could just do it over and over again as many times as I wanted to, just like I used to be able to. And that gave me a lot of my confidence back, so I headed over to this 4-foot quarter pipe to try it there, and it did take me a couple tries to figure out how to get up there and get into a comfortable back 5.0 stall, but once I did, I knew that I could just come back in, and I got it the next try and could just do it after that.
They say some tricks are easier on bigger ramps, so I decided to try out that theory with crookback disaster. Because when I was trying to relearn this trick, I was having trouble getting the board to turn as much as I wanted to, so I thought to myself, I wonder if I tried this on a bigger ramp if I could get the board to spin a little bit more, because then maybe my front wheels won't hit the ramp. It turned out it was a lot easier to get as much rotation as I wanted on the bigger ramp, but it was a hell of a lot scarier. So yes, on paper the trick is a lot easier to do on a bigger ramp, but the reality is it just depends on how comfortable you are with skating the bigger ramp, because if you have two options, one to where you have to learn a trick terrified, or two to where you can just learn a trick and focus on the trick, it's going to be a hell of a lot easier just to focus on the trick because you don't have to go through the whole mental process. How many tries does it take to land a switch 50-50 when I haven't done one in over 6 months? Let's find out. Now before I started trying it, I did take a couple of minutes to try to figure out how to lock into a switch 50-50 again, which it did help me out a lot, but it still took me a couple of tries to figure out where I needed to pop so I could lock into the grind, and then from there all I had to do was force myself to skate faster so I could roll off the end of the ledge successfully. And the answer is 11, but I wanted to relearn fakie 50-50, so I just started trying them, and I ran into two major problems. One, I was having trouble getting locked into the ledge, then when I did, I was having trouble getting out of the grind. So to fix that, I started focusing on keeping my shoulders parallel with the ledge so it would be easier to get locked in, and then the only other thing that I had to do is just force myself to go faster so I could ride off the ledge successfully. I wanted to get better at front crooks, so after doing a few on the spine, I headed over to this 4-foot ramp to do some nose stalls and to visualize myself getting into it, which honestly didn't really help much because it still took me a few tries to get used to trying on this ramp so I could start getting my truck on the coping. Then from there, it took me a few tries to get one that was really locked in there so I could pull it back in and roll away, but how many tries will it take to do a fakie big spin when I haven't done one in at least 6 months? Let's find out. So the entire time I was trying this, I was focusing on just doing a pop shove it because you can get away with not spinning the full 180, which actually happened a few times after I got my first one. I just wanted to do one that was better, so I kept on trying it and got this one. And the answer is 4, but that's doing shit that scares me, part 72. Now I needed to relearn half cab rocks before I could add in a transfer, and the hardest part of that was definitely getting the board to not over rotate because my shoulders and hips wanted to keep on spinning. Which that was also the scariest part of the transfer too, because it felt like I had no control over it until I got my front wheels to hit the ramp fast enough to stop me from over rotating and I could ride away comfortably, but that's... I wanted to manual ledge again, but before I could do that, I had to get comfortable with olling on top of the ledge first, which it did take a few tries, but it did make it easier to try the manual, which only took me 3 tries to land. Ow! That's it! The easiest trick you can do on transition after you learn kick turns is a slash grind, because the only thing you have to do is wait until you're a little bit higher up on the ramp to start the kick turn so your back truck can tap the coping, making it a slash grind. And this was a 2-day long battle, and on the first day I spent most of the hour just trying to get over the fear that I had by focusing on keeping my weight centered or trying to build up more pressure with my ankle in that back pocket. But none of them worked for me this time. It was actually just running out of time, because the pressure of having to do it or go home without it helped me get out of my head long enough to be able to get a few that I wasn't happy with, which is why the next day I went back to try it again, and this time there wasn't much fear at all, which allowed me to focus on keeping my shoulders straight, which was my biggest problem, because when you turn your shoulders you not only lose power, but it also makes it a lot harder to get your front foot back on the board since everything follows your shoulders. Doing shit that scares me, part 73. I needed to switch tail drop into this bank, so to warm up I did a bunch of Swiss tail drops off this ledge first before just jumping into this bank trying to feel out how steep it was, which honestly that part didn't help out at all, because when I actually started trying it I was still terrified of slipping out and smacking my head on the ledge. So I did the smart thing and put a helmet on, and that did help calm me down a little bit, but honestly the main thing was just the pressure of getting the GoPro angle before it died, because I forgot to charge it last night, which actually turned out my favorite this time. I wanted to nose stall this ledge, so after doing a few switch drop-ins I started doing some ollie to fakies to get used to popping on the bank again before going for the nose stall, which it did end up taking me a while, mostly because I was afraid of going too fast and falling over the other side of the ledge. But once I figured out the speed, it just took me a little bit longer to feel confident enough in the nose stall to bring it back into the bank. But that's why doing half the ledge was a half an hour long battle that I had to fight through a few different things to figure it out, and the first one was the speed. Because to nose slide farther you have to go faster, and it took me a little while to adjust to not only the faster speed, but also having to set my feet up quicker, because what felt like a short run up has now become an even shorter one. Then I had to learn how to trust myself with putting more weight on the nose so I could actually hold the nose slide to go the distance that I wanted to. Oh, dude, that was f***ing it. I wanted to 5-0 this ledge, so after doing a few 50-50s that took me way too long to land, I thought it'd be a good idea to try some 5-0 stationary so I could build up some confidence before adding in some speed. Which it only took me a couple tries to land, but I hated how slow I was going, so I spent the next 20 minutes trying to force myself to get a 5-0 that was faster and got this one.